This week on Wild Talk, it's girl power. We are joined by the one and only Eva Shockey. We get into her upbringing and what it was like to grow up Shockey and how this turned into a successful career as an entrepreneur and how the hunting industry has undergone a transformation as we see a huge rise in women in the outdoors. The crew from Hodag joins us to talk about their brand, and then the one and only Kate Rundle with her social segment. Sit back and enjoy this week's episode of Wild Talk. We are back with more Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton.
We are back at it for another social segment on Wild Talk.
This episode of Wild Talk is brought to you by Aventura Self-Heating Beverages. Enjoy your adventure with the comfort of a hot drink anywhere, anytime. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Timber Stoves, the original wood pellet patio heater. And Wild TV Plus. Stream the best outdoor adventures on all your favorite devices. All right, we're back with more Wild Talk. So, if I say the words influencer, outdoors woman, author, entrepreneur, the second woman ever on the cover of Field and Stream, the name Eva Shockey is the one that should come to mind. Eva, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
Oh, it's been a while since you and I had chatted in person, and lots gone on since we chatted. Ups, downs all over the map. So what's new in your life right now?
We are planning out the rest of our year right now. We're actually currently nothing to do with hunting. We're building a barn and we just got chickens and we're like living that field to table, but now sort of farm to table, expanding on it a little bit. Except the difference is a lot of people said, like, are you going to use the cows and stuff for meat? And I was like, no, we hunt for meat. We like to keep that as like what our meat is. So the animals at our house are more just like eggs and whatever. But yeah, we're doing that here with our kids and planning out our fall hunting season and just kind of what the rest of the year is going to look like. And it's exciting. We're excited for it.
I bet. Following you on social media for a bunch of years now, and one of the things that always seems to come up is, what color should I paint my house?
I was making a joke the other day. I was on Instagram and I did one of those like Q&A boxes where I could just say like, ask me whatever. It's sort of how when I've been busy, it's a lot of people DM me. I don't have a lot of time to get through my DMs because it actually like individually, they take quite a while when you're trying to like accept them or whatever. So a lot of times I'll just catch up and do a Q&A box. And I posted about it after. I was laughing because one question was like, it was something about the politics in California with like gun control. And then the very next one was like, what's your favorite mascara? And then the next one was like, where do you buy your bedding? And then the next one was something about archery. And I'm like, I don't know anyone else that gets asked these questions in unison, kind of back to back. And then I answer them consecutively with like, don't even miss a beat. I'm like, that all kind of makes sense to me, those types of questions across the board.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that. It was just like, I was like, what the heck is going on here? It's just all over the map, the range of questions you had to deal with.
Yeah,
like,
which really represents me as a person, I guess.
It sure does.
I should be the one to blame here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dig into it. What was it like to essentially grow up Shockey?
It was honestly until which just sounds so crazy now because I guess because there was no social media, I lived in a small town in Canada. We had TV, but like it was such a small part of my life. I never watched our own show on TV. It really was not something I even realized was remotely different than growing up Smith or Jones until I was like 20. Seriously, in university and college, I was there. And that's when people first started kind of mentioning that it was not weird in a bad way, but just unique, I guess. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess so. And then I think after that, when I got more into the industry, it made a lot more sense how unique it was. But in high school, it wasn't even a thing. And I didn't hunt. My mom was like a vegetarian model actress when she met my dad. And she didn't stay vegetarian, but she stayed like very much not hunting my whole life. And so I didn't hunt through high school, and no one, I just kind of went with the flow I was an athlete and all that. So I didn't really realize it. But when I look back in hindsight to answer your question, it was awesome because it created this part of my personality that is like very independent, very up for adventure. I love challenges. I love going new places. I don't like sitting still long. I don't like, I don't like doing things the easy way. And that was all because of how we grew up as Shockey family members and how we traveled. And we're just kind of forced out of our comfort zone a lot and out of our little bubble and never did what the average family got to do for vacations. And we were staying in trailer parks and traveling across to Mexico in like a van, whereas like all my friends were going to resorts or something a little more normal for their spring break. So yeah, it was really cool. I'm very grateful that my parents raised us like that, and now that I'm a mom, I see how important it is to put your kids in those situations, and I can kind of see myself playing out a very similar childhood for my kids as I had.
You mentioned that you didn't start hunting till you were around 20 or something. So what was the catalyst that meant that said to you, I want to pivot into this providing for myself?
So my whole life, my family was very much like the field to table lifestyle. And again, before we knew that was even a weird or not weird thing, it was normal, not normal. Like we had no idea. Obviously back then it was fairly abnormal probably for like the average family that's not like super rural to be doing that. But we had the gardens, we obviously fished, my dad hunted, our freezers were full of veggies and meat and all that. And so and again, I don't know if it's because life, and now I live in the States, so it's even more like things are at your fingertips immediately. And I don't, it's kind of weird to think back that I didn't realize this, but it was a different time, you guys. I mean, I feel like Kaylee might not know because you are younger, but I feel like me and Steve are the same. It was a different time and things were not like so obvious. You couldn't do things so quickly. So I just didn't really realize what it was like to go buy meat at the grocery store. I had never done it. And I went to college when I was 18, and I remember I went to Australia. So like I couldn't bring meat from my family's freezer and put it in my college dorm room. I flew to Australia and I went to buy meat, and I still remember standing at the counter, first of all being like, oh my gosh, meat is so expensive on a college budget. You're looking for like the cheapest thing you can buy. And also I was just sort of like where did it come from? And the guys were looking at me like, who asked that when you're at the meat? Like, why would you ask where it comes from? And I just was kind of confused. The whole thing was bizarre to me. So I went to finish college, got my business marketing degree. And when I came home, I told my dad that I, first of all, was like, how is there this thing, this is such a huge part of his life that I had never tried? Like, how could he love it so much and I wasn't willing to give it a try? That was sort of part of it. And then the second part was that I just lived for my whole degree with food from the grocery store, and it's so not what I was used to. So I wanted to fill my freezer myself. And so those were sort of the two parts. He'd been asking me for, 20 years at that point to come hunting with him. And I came home and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I mean, his jaw about hit the floor, and that just kind of never turned back from there.
Oh, my daughter is 11 and a half now, and she's had her hunting license here in BC since she was 10 when you can get it. And I think it was her fourth or fifth birthday, I said, because she's born right in the middle of hunting season, of course. And I said, what do you want to do for your birthday? And she says, let's go hunting, fishing, and trapping today. So I got a brilliant picture that I absolutely love of us just wandering through the bush. And yeah, she's got a couple of grouse to her name. And last hunting season, there was a whitetail that was right out in front of us, and it would have been her first big game animal. I don't think I could ever be more proud, but it was quartering towards us. And she's out and she's got the rifle up, and she looks at me and she goes, that's not a good shot. I'm not comfortable with it. And I went, oh, I'm doing it right. So it walked into the bush, and she's like, I'm okay with letting it go. So yeah, it's that connecting to the food that seems to be incredibly important right now. Like a few weeks ago, I think I told Kaylee before, where we were eating beef on the table, and she looks at me and she goes, this tastes different, because she's so used to moose and caribou and elk
It is true.
and bear.
It's true. It really does. And it's part of how I grew up. And again, giving props to my parents that it is hard to raise your kids understanding that, because it is really a lot easier to just throw food and never mention it, whatever. But a part of what my husband Tim and I are doing as well is we explain what it is, and sometimes little kids are like, wait, it died? And you're like, yes. And I mean, on surface level, saying like explaining animals dying is like kind of hard to a little kid who thinks they're cute and fluffy, but at the same time explaining the connection between all the things, like between like the disconnect of where it comes from and on your table is such a huge thing right now. And so our kids understand it's elk and moose, and they'll point to it on the wall, or they'll talk about, they call my dad Bubba. So they'll say, is that when you went hunting with Bubba, or whatever it was. So I just think it's a really cool thing. I think it also gives more respect to the animal, because again, if you're eating beef at the table, which nothing wrong with beef, there's amazing farmers, there's amazing, like, you know, there's so many different industries that are all wonderful, and if you pick the right ones within it. But like we never talk about the cow if we're eating a beef hamburger. You know, we don't mention that cow or talk about the experience or remember it after the fact. Whereas like an animal, like an elk that you hunt and you have a story, it's like you show a little more respect to it because you're bringing it back up again. It's sort of like a legacy of that animal. So that's how we live our lives and are trying to pass on to our kids. And it seems important. I don't know. Ask me in 20 years.
It is so important.
Yeah, you're doing it well. It's quite obvious in the way you see the kids running and playing on Instagram, and
oh yeah, with their little bows and everything, and they're so gentle with your new chickens too. You're raising them real good.
Well, our daughter's gentle. Our son, the first day we got them, they were like this big. Brought them down the slide on our playground. And I was like, I feel like they might be a little bit. He was thinking they were like monster trucks, you know. But yes, they're good. They got a lot better since then.
Let's pivot back just a little bit. I want to know, what was your first animal? Let's hear that story.
My first ever animal was a gopher, or a prairie dog in the prairies. That's where my dad's from. I don't know if that really counts. But my first like bigger actual hunt animal was a warthog in South Africa, which is the first hunt. I was living in BC at the time when I came home from university, when I told my dad, which is where my parents lived, that I wanted to go hunting. And so I went and got my hunter's license and all that stuff. I still have my BC hunter card. I just had to use it the other day, which I don't even know how I've kept track of it all these years. And then my dad was going on a hunt to Africa that summer, because at the time he was traveling like 310 days a year. And so he kind of just slotted me into the hunt he was already going on, because he wanted me to not change my mind. And so I went with my mom and him and hunted for a warthog, because I didn't know if I'd be able to. I didn't really know if once I was there with like an animal in my sights, being 20, I didn't know if I actually wanted to shoot something. And I did. And then after that, it was, I was like, oh yeah, no, I get it. This is not the shooting part so much for me fun, but like the whole experience fun. And I remember we went to the skinning shed after when I got the warthog, and my whole life while I ate the meat, it still kind of like icked me, the skinning and stuff. Like, you know, there's a lot to it. But when I hunted it myself, almost immediately, like it didn't bother me. It was so bizarre. It was like my brain just clicked over and I was like, oh, that's the meat from this animal that will then go, and we ate it that night. It was the first time I'd ever provided for my family, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That is so neat. What was your general picture of Africa? How was your general experience?
It was amazing. I loved it. I would go back there in a second. I went quite a few times, like 5-6 times over those next 5 years, and then got married, got busy, had babies. And so my husband, Tim, has never been back. And that is actually our like number one bucket list place. I've been a handful of times to South Africa, Namibia, and Tanzania. But it was amazing. So beautiful. The people are so kind. And it was just I again, love stepping out of our little bubble of a comfort zone and putting yourself in new situations and like adapting, not bringing your situation to them so much, but adapting to whatever that culture is and situation is wherever you go, and just realizing how big the world is. And again, after 2020, I feel like a lot of us were stuffed inside or like, you know, had to sort of stay put for a while. And it's almost like you forget how big the world actually is and how many different people there are and how different ways of life, like, you know, it's not just what you have in BC or what you have here in North Carolina. There's a lot more out there.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. That sounds so exciting. Do you guys have a bucket list animal for you and Tim?
Not so much in Africa. Tim probably. Well, actually, he got his. He did elk with a bow. He got one last year. He mostly hunts with a bow, which is cool, but also does not fill our freezer as much as I would like.
Mhm.
When he keeps going hunts, I'm like, I love bow hunting. I'm all for it, but also like I love meat in our freezer. So if we could like maybe do like 50-50. But yeah, so I don't actually know. We've never really like thought through once you're in Africa what we want to go hunt for. We're just getting to Africa and hunting in Africa, whatever that would look like. I would still, my bucket list animal would still be elk with my bow, which we just put in for a draw, and we'll find out soon for Montana. It's archery, so it might be this fall. I've tried a handful of times. I've got a bunch of elk with my gun, but have never successfully got an archery bull. So that would be my first choice.
That is super exciting.
So Africa, you had to bring it up. My daughter and I just came back from the BC Wildlife Federation AGM, like literally yesterday. Biggest fundraiser of the year, and they had an African trip up for auction, for live auction. And my daughter, like I said, is 11, and she's been dying to go on this hunt there. And she taps me and she goes, "Can we?" And I said, "If the price is right." And so she's sitting behind me, and we go through all the items, and then it's time to bid on the African item. The auctioneer starts going, and I look at the kid, and she does the doe eyes. I'm like, and I tap her on the leg, and immediately her hand shoots up, and an 11-year-old's bidding, and the room just goes, "Aww." There's 200 people there. I'm like, okay, and then another bid comes online, and then tap her on the leg, and then it's just fast and furious, and all of a sudden it goes going sold, and points right at me, and I look at her and I go, and then they're on me, and like, so long story short, we're going to Africa next year. It's gonna be.
I was hoping that story wasn't going to end sad that someone outbid an 11-year-old. That's amazing. Where in Africa are you going?
South Africa, Limpopo.
Oh, who are you going with? Do you know the guy?
Jacques Kellerman Safaris, which is pretty epic.
Oh, cool.
But what's amazing is included in this package is for us is we get an impala, a bleeze buck, and a warthog, which is pretty awesome.
I think those are actually, I did warthog and then blessed buck and then impala on my first hunt. I feel like that's a very common first sort of like safari, like South Africa plains game. But yeah, that's amazing. Good for you guys.
It's going to be great. She was all excited, and she got pictures with this gift certificate, and she's just beaming. We go up to our room, and she just grabs onto me and just starts the happy tears. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Oh, I'm just so excited." So I'm like, you know what? It's a dent on the credit card, but it's happy memories that are filling a bucket list. Joined by the guys from Hodag Outdoors, Jeremy, Scott, and for this segment, we got Ryan Kohler, president of Wild TV. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you for having us.
I'm just going to sit back and throw the questions at you guys and kind of make this a campfire conversation if you guys are cool with it. So I've learned a ton about Hodag from my last conversations with Jeremy and Scott, but I want to hear from somebody like yourself, Ryan, who has used these products in the field. I've followed your Instagram for a while now, and I've seen some amazing footage. So I know you're a big user. So what's your experience been like with these things?
Well, I think the first thing I would say would be like the fun factor. The fun factor is huge, right? So there's a reason to go outside and goof around with whitetails. There's a reason to try to get big whitetails to come into an area. You've got, basically I call them toys you can use to get photos with. So when you go outside and you start using, whether it's the hemp scent rope, the licking stick, or the licking branch, and pictures start coming back, it's really rewarding. So that'd be the first thing I would say is it's super fun to use them to go outside. It's rewarding to get pictures. You feel like you've achieved something, right? You built something in the woods and a deer went and hit it or touched it or played with it. So right away you're like, okay, this is awesome. It's way more fun, I suppose, right? So in the past, like in Alberta, for example, we would use scrapes. You go out there and you try and find scrapes, put cameras on them. But now I can do so much more, right? Like you've got the licking stick that we've used and the deer play with the licking stick, or the hemp scent ropes. The ropes for me are really fun because the ropes that I've put out, the deer have annihilated them. I've got photos and videos of deer taking their rope and just like completely tearing it completely apart. like the horns are covered, the rope's stuck in their horns, and they've thrashed them. So everything that I've used so far, and I've got 1 season under my belt using the stuff, and I can't wait to get to like 3 and 4 and 5, because with whitetails, you're learning all the time and it's always changing. And so as far as the products go, it's super exciting to use them.
So talk to me about the hemp scent rope. Like that's not something I immediately am drawn to when I think of deer hunting itself. So explain a little bit about the rope to me.
The idea with the hemp is the hemp ropes. We like vines are something that people talk about today with scent marking a lot. And Scott and I have both experimented with it, and I have farms that have them on it, and I have some farms that don't have them on it. And what we found is, like in nature, if the vine hangs down perfectly, you do find deer use it. They'll use them as scent marking, but very few spots that they're perfect, you know? And so what we realized is, and the hemp, the story behind the hemp part of it is like, we've got another brand that's this dog brand. And years ago, we're talking 15 years ago, we had some products that were made with big, heavy hemp rope. And hemp is as close to a natural compound as you're going to find. Like it's a fibrous material that is natural. And so it's not man-made. There's no chemicals in it. It's as close to like what you're going to find in the wild.
I found that, like, because we don't have vines in Canada, they've never seen ropes.
Sure.
Right? Like they've never seen it. So for us, or for me here, it was like a scent checking rope.
I say one of the surprises for me, Ryan, too, was they use them year round.
Yeah, we learned that last year too. We put them out in September, and the deer I killed last year, this big, heavy, huge 6x7 or something, like it started coming through the scrape and hitting the scrape early in September.
Like I don't have very big acreage that I live on, and I'm right behind my house, and I've got licking sticks, I've got ropes, and I've got licking branches. And I don't have a big enough property that the bucks live there, but I've got a couple does that live there and fawn there every year, and we watch them out the back window, and I know they're there. I know they live. That's their home. That's very much their home range. But what I do is I put them out. I have these, the licking stick, the licking branch, and the ropes on this 20 acres. And I'll get those same 2 does, and I'll get their fawns, and they're playing with it, and they're scent marking it all summer long. It's usually, by me, it's about October 15th. I start to get the first buck that comes, and I don't see them all year, but as soon as that time window, and it's usually within a week, I get the first buck to come and check them. And then within a matter of about 3 to 4 weeks, I'll have 15, 20 different bucks that come through. They only come through during that window. But I know why they're doing it is because they're checking on those 2 does. As a small business, for Scott and I, it's the biggest highlight we get, and we get it a lot in the fall, is people will send us pictures of deer that they shot over one of our products. And it's like we've had pictures of kids that have killed deer during the youth hunt over our products. And it's like, that's the most satisfying thing that we can see.
I think that's a great way to end it there, guys. Ryan, thanks for giving some great info on these. You've sold me on it. And Jeremy and Scott, it's been an absolute blast learning a ton from you guys. So you guys have a good day, and we'll chat soon.
Hello, everyone. Kate Rundle here, back at it with another social segment on Wild Talk. For today's episode, we are so excited to have Eva Shockey joining us as one of our special guests. We're actually going to give her the whole episode, but before we get to it, let's check out some videos we found online. For today's theme, we're keeping it female focused, so let's see what these ladies of the wild are up to. Alrighty, everybody, that's a wrap for this week's social segment. Hope you enjoyed those videos just as much as I did, and thank you to all the women that were featured in this week's episode. Till next time, stay wild.
So let's pivot this direction. Eva, you are a well looked up to female hunter. Being the authentic hunter that you are, why is it so important?
I did not do it intentionally. Like I said, when I came home from college and wanted to hunt, I genuinely wanted to fill my freezer. At the time, I wanted to do marketing or something like that. And it just happened. It was sort of right place, right time, right family, obviously, because if I would have been able to pick, I probably would have picked at the time to hunt not on camera, because who wants to hunt on their first time on camera? Like, it's a lot of pressure. Yeah. And so as a 20-year-old, I didn't have a choice, but I probably would have been like, no, thank you. I'm good. Thanks, Dad. Like, I'll go with you, but like, let's not film my hunt. But of course, that wasn't how it happened. And then me and him started going on more hunts, and we have a really fun personality or relationship with our two personalities. And so it just kind of started rolling like that. I think a lot of people saw in me themselves, because I was starting out, and again, obviously my dad's a lot smarter than me. He was a lot smarter than me back then. He saw that that would be good for people, because I was a new hunter. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a lot of interest and a lot of questions, and I made a lot of mistakes, but that was all filmed and captured. And so I think a lot of people understood, like, oh, I don't have to be a TV host, professional, the best ever to go and start hunting, or I don't have to be 6 or 7 to go hunting, or I don't have to look a certain way to go hunting. Like, I kind of represented all those things. It was just a big deal that it turned into kind of what it is, and that I got to spend that many years watching so many girls just try it for the first time or be open to it for the first time. And I got to have a lot of wonderful opportunities that I was representing a lot of people. And so it's just a really big responsibility, but also to see that I made a little bit of a difference or made an impact on girls, like the girl with the sheep. I mean, that's really cool that at one point in her life, she saw me and saw herself, and I don't want to say I didn't have that I didn't really have that in the hunting world as a female, because my mom didn't hunt and I looked after her completely, but like, she didn't hunt. So that was not one of the things. And then, like I said, I didn't have social media. So there was no one to go watch. We didn't have TV where we are. And in small town Canada, we didn't have the US networks. And I mean, you guys, maybe you think back to when Kaylee was in diapers and Steve was younger. We didn't have we just didn't have access. So I think I'm very humbled and grateful that I got to be that person for some of these girls out there.
So Eva, how have women in the hunting industry changed since you were growing up?
I mean, it looks honestly night and day from when I first started. And it's not that women didn't hunt, because I feel like a lot of people think like, oh, women just actually didn't hunt. I don't think that's true. I think it wasn't normalized enough for women to feel, first of all, maybe comfortable talking about it. And again, back for the 100th time, there wasn't social media that spans across the universe of they can talk about it, it could spread. So it just wasn't as normal to hunt, I would say. So when I was young, we would go to the trade shows. We'd go to SCI and SHOT Show and probably the BC Wildlife, of all the events and expos that they had back then. And I would go with my parents, my brother, and me and my mom were like two of the few women in the whole building. And I remember that so clearly. Or you'd go to the big ones like in Vegas, like SHOT Show, SCI, and tons of men, tons of younger boys. And then there were just a handful of women that either were like, like rugged, rough in their full camo head to toe, or like women that were what we called trophy wives, which is probably not politically correct, but honestly, it's a compliment. It's very beautiful women but like, they weren't there to hunt. And so nowadays you go and it's amazing because there's such a wide spread of people and so many women. And I go like, we were at a signing just a few weeks ago, or I guess a month ago in Nashville, and it was probably 50-50. And it's just incredible. And it's just to see the difference in how many girls go, young girls, my age, older women, like so many people involved, and so proud of it. And the industry has really adapted because of that. Or I don't know if it's like chicken and the egg situation, like what came first? Was it more women getting involved and the industry adapted, or did the industry adapt to allow for more women to kind of like, we have our own bows that fit us, we have guns that fit us, we have camo that fits us, we have whatever else that's made for us and for our bodies and for our size. And I just think it lets us feel very comfortable and very welcome in an industry that generally, stereotypically, was not quite as accepting, I guess, of women.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on it perfectly, that women are the fastest growing demographic in hunting. But sadly, what's what seems to have shown up a lot with that is the hate, and it's a touchy subject for anybody. I've dealt with it myself, posting pictures of my daughter out hunting with like, holding up a grouse, and you get the expected comments. So with somebody as high profile as you, how do you deal with that?
So when I first started hunting, again, the same conversation when I told my dad that first day I wanted to try it, he sat, of course he was excited, but he also, I'm his little girl, and my mom was pretty specific on like, she wasn't a hunter, so it wasn't like this was an expected thing. And what he said to me, and I don't know if I fully grasped it at the time, he said, once you are a hunter, you can never not be a hunter. Like, you can stop hunting, but people will see you for the rest of your life. Like, if you ever want to be the face of PETA, it's probably not going to happen, you know? Like, he basically said, once you do this, it'll be branded on you, and you have to be able to be proud enough to be a hunter that that's not going to bother you, because not everyone in the world loves it. And I was like, yeah, okay, you know, that's fine. And he said I would be a big target because I was young, I was blonde, I was smiley, I didn't fit the mold of what people expected, and I was a big target. Again, he didn't probably know to the extent either, because that's right when social media was picking up. But we had thousands and thousands of death threats on hunts that I went on, and they went viral all over every news network. I mean, stuff that like you wouldn't expect and never would have guessed. But the weird thing is that stuff truly actually didn't bother me, and it was because by then I understood how important hunting was and how important conservation was, and filling the freezer and just the lifestyle of it. I was like so fully ingrained in the positive of hunting that when people came at me with all these arguments and death threats, it didn't bother me, because I was like, I mean, you guys are wrong. You know, what I'm doing is good. I'm raising money for conservation. I'm filling my freezer. I'm buying tags and licenses, and I'm getting fresh air and spending time with my family. Like, these are not bad things. And so I just felt so strongly that what I was doing was a great thing. I just had no reason to back down. You know, I wasn't going, if I was doing something that was shady, you know, and I was getting called out on it, I feel like that probably would have got me more, because I would have been like, oh, they're going to find out, you know, but I just wasn't. There was nothing shady about what I was doing, and nothing that I didn't truly believe that was a good thing.
Can you recall a hunt that shaped you as a person? What was the most meaningful hunting experience that you found yourself in?
There's been a lot of hunts that have challenged me, and mentally and physically, just again, because there's not anything like at your fingertips when you're hunting a lot of places, and it puts you just in zones of discomfort where normally I'd be like fighting to get out of those, or things are slower and I run really fast, and so it always takes me a little bit to like settle into that and not be like, what time is it? Where do we need to go? We need to get here. Like, you're just where you are, and that's where your home is when you're hunting, and like, you know, you'll figure it out. But I would say shape me probably would just be because everything was for me about family in the hunting experience that I grew up with. And so I spent a lot of time, obviously, with my dad, of course, and that before we started hunting together, while we were a very close family, me and him didn't have a lot in common, and except for our strong personalities, which as a teenager with a strong personality, without a lot in common with your dad, like, we would butt heads a lot. And so hunting was absolutely 100% what brought us together and created a really close bond for us. And then further than that, with my grandfathers, because Hal and Len, if you go way back in our hunting catalogs to back in the olden days, they were on our show all the time. And again, as a teenager, I loved them, but like, what do you spend time with your grandfathers doing that much, you know, that often as a teenage girl? It just, your lives are so different at that point, unfortunately. And so that was something that allowed me to have all these memories with my grandpas. And because we were filming, it was really wonderful, because now I have DVD memories, or whatever platform those are even on these days, but I have those memories forever. And so having that family connection, and something I don't know if I would have had that to that extent without hunting.
You're gonna make it sound so old, Eva. Like, I remember when.
I know.
I
Steve, this is like killing me.
I do remember one of the first DVDs of your dad's I watched. Your grandpa he's up in the north, and he walks out and he goes, let's go see if we can put some fish on the table. He walks out to the dock, does one cast, reels it in, goes, they're not biting, and comes back in. Absolutely hilarious.
About We actually just got just a couple weeks ago. I haven't even finished setting it up. So my kids are 4 and 7, and we're just getting where like my 7-year-old will pick up the remote and start. We have streaming platforms, we have Netflix and whatever else, and my 7-year-old will sit out there and start flipping through stuff. And at one point I'm like, okay, I know what that is, that's fine. And then I go grab something and come back and I'm like, what are you watching, what's happening? So now she's just old enough where she's more curious about, like, she doesn't necessarily know they're bad, but I'm like, no, this is not happening in my house. And so now I set up a DVD player, which I had to find on Amazon. I didn't even know like where to buy one. And then I got the full collection, the Jim Shockey's hunting collection, best of Jim Shockey, best of Eva Shockey, the professionals, my whole family's DVD collection, and it is now in our little TV room. And so unless we're watching like a family movie where we're all together, my kids are not allowed to touch the remote, and they can pick out whatever DVD they want. If I give them screen time, like, go and watch any of those, and they'll see family, they'll see hunting, they'll see adventure, they'll see all the things that the shows were about. And there's nothing that I'm like horrified. The world is just, I'm like, I don't trust any platforms. Like, I don't want my kids just. It takes 5 minutes for them to see something that for 5 years you can't unravel from their little brains that are absorbing everything. So highly recommend the DVD world.
I like that. I'm just going to put Wild Talk on repeat for the kid.
Oh yeah. But then once they get the remotes, I'm like, my daughter, like, she's not quite old enough to do it trying to be like, secretive about it, but she also wants to flip through and see, oh, that person, I like their hair. And I'm like, well, that's, yeah, you got to hide the remotes or take the batteries out or something.
Successfully. We talked about it earlier at the beginning with the home renovations and the painting and all that. What made you say this?
So, well, I didn't follow in his footsteps as far as like being like the best and the biggest hunter for sure. But on the flip side, I like almost exactly followed in his footsteps, because my whole life I was taught about doing something you love and following your passions and making sure you're doing something with your time that you're actually motivated to do because it excites you. And so, and he has all these businesses and whatever, but they're based strictly around hunting for the most part. But as I got older, again, I didn't start hunting till I was 20. So I'd had 20 years of all these other things that I loved. I had my mom's influence on me, which was very different from my dad's influence. And then I had whatever I traveled and all these different things that I had just loved. And I've never been one. I honestly, half the reason I started hunting is people were like, you shouldn't hunt. And that actually fueled me to be like, you know what, I can do what I want to do because I don't fit in one little box. And so that was something I wanted to do as I got into hunting. I love hunting, but I also am very aware that I could represent a whole bunch of people that never had considered hunting, that maybe would look at Steve and say, okay, yeah, that's what a hunter looks like. That's what I thought. Whereas they see me and they're like, okay, well, she's on this home reno platform and she has this stuff going on and she has a cookbook and she has this other, like, I could actually see myself more like that. So I feel like it's been me attempting to bring in more people just really organically and also represent all the sides to myself, because again, I love hunting, I love the outdoors, but I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I love cooking and I love XYZ that aren't just hunting, but it all kind of works together. Like, if anyone out there can have different hobbies, interests in it, hunting is a lifestyle that it's not, you don't have to choose that and nothing else. It's like, that's part of our life, that's what we eat. But then there's all these other things that go into that lifestyle, the healthy living and the outdoors and shooting your bows and the chickens and the kids. Like, I think a lot more people can relate to those elements than traveling to Africa, every year and hunting plains game. So it's kind of just gone hand in hand, I guess. And I really actually also thought, would I step more into the mom role and into the wife role, which it's all I ultimately wanted when I was young anyways. I was like, well, everyone's going to stop following me. That's not why they came here. And yes, of course, I lost some of like people that were just there to see me with the dead animals, but I gained a lot more people that like, that there's a little more well-roundedness there. And it's been really fun to be able to be super, like you guys said, authentic to who I am. And, you're going to see some workouts and you're going to see some jalapeno elk poppers and you're going to see some kids with chicks and you're going to see some shooting a bow. And it's just we all have a lot to our personalities, and outdoor industry has been wonderful that has been very accepting of that.
Yeah, those elk poppers looked amazing, and I did make
They
them
do.
on my my Traeger. But I always, whenever I see you asking about renovations and stuff and what color is going to look great, I just immediately go to remember the old TV show. I don't want to say old, but remember that TV show, This Old House, right? That's where I go with it. Is like it's going to be. Eva wants to know what color her room's going to look good while you're looking through the window and seeing the game skinning pole out back.
Yeah, we're about to build a barn, and we're like, what should we put in there? And at first, it was going to be animals, and now somehow it's like my husband's old truck collection. And I think I got punked because all the animals that I thought were going to be in there, he was like, well, we'll need like a different building for that. I'm like, wait, what?
What other exciting big news do you have coming up this year? Anything that you're super eager about?
I'm excited just to have a little free time again, to get back into hunting again. We put in our tags for some places like Montana, where I think we're going to go to South Dakota, have some time with my husband, get our kids out there. That we brought them hunting last fall for the first time, and it was so funny and so loud. And like, I mean, my daughter and I actually had a bear come right into stand, which it was not bear season, so that wasn't that great, but we were hunting whitetails, didn't see one, but it was fun to have them out there. So I feel like we have one more year now under their belts of like being quiet, and we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I think our family had a rough couple years with health, and my mom and lost her last fall. And so just looking for the positives in everything, and looking for life continuing, and getting back to having a little bit of freedom to go outdoors and go on adventures, and not be, I guess, so sad and worried about someone struggling with their health issues, and just knowing that she wanted us all to be happy and go do the stuff. So we're definitely excited about what's coming in the next 6-8 months.
That's I mentioned it to a bunch of people, like when I last had you on a podcast last year or whatever, and it was your brother, your mom, or your dad was on there, and then your mom kind of peeked through in the back, and I went, we all kind of just went speechless. And then she came up and gave us 30 seconds of her time. I'm like, I tell people, Kaylee will vouch that there's a presence you felt with her, even though she didn't have to say much. It was like a wow that just stuck with you. And I remember getting the inReach. I was in the bush when she passed, and my wife texted me on the inReach, and all it said was Louise, and I knew what it meant. So your mom had quite the impact on a lot of people. So.
Oh, I love that. She really did. And she honestly was more like an angel on earth than like any human's supposed to be. So she was probably just a temporary person down here on earth. And now she's actually where she's meant to be anyways. But yeah, she was wonderful. So we got a lot of time with her last year. But again, I spent the last 2 years with every free moment of my time flying between North Carolina, where I live, and BC, where she was. And so having this sort of like being able to breathe now a little bit, obviously it's not what anyone wanted, but it's what happens in life. And so being able to breathe and just have,
that's right.
We can look forward and make plans, obviously God willing plans, but we can make some plans, and I haven't been able to do that in a long time. So that's, honestly, it sounds like a weird answer, but that's what I'm most excited for.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So as we wrap this up and let you go, I got 5 rapid fire questions for you that I didn't prep you for. You ready?
Okay. Well, you didn't prep me for anything, Steve. So go ahead.
Moose or elk? Elk.
Elk, which is what me and my dad do not agree on. Okay, go ahead.
Whitetail or mule deer?
Whitetail.
Rifle or bow?
Bow.
Favorite food?
Elk jalapeno poppers.
Crushed it. And the last one, red or white wine?
Red.
How come that one got the most animation out of you?
It's almost time for wine, and I'm just so excited.
Right.
And honestly, any color of wine works.
Awesome. So go enjoy your red wine with the family. I know you got a busy night ahead of you, but thanks from all of us at Wild TV, from me and Kaylee at Wild Talk. Eva, you were epic as always. Let's do this again.
Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you, Kaylee. Thanks for having me on here.